August 2013, we found out that we're pregnant. Then unfortunately, we lost the baby on the 8th week of pregnancy.
The second pregnancy, which we thought was going okay, was not really okay. We lost the child at 8 weeks again. At that time, the OB actually advised us to get tested. And lo and behold, we found out that I have APAS, antibody syndrome. There are killer cells or NK cells inside my body. So no matter how you try to conceive, it will always try to attack the baby.
Alam yung mga lalaki, pag sinabing, magkita tayo for closure, huwag kayong maniniwala sa mga ganun.
Para akong biggest achievement at the same time biggest disappointment. Hindi eh. Iba pala yung feeling.
Ano ba yan? Kasi naman wala pang 5 minutes. Pero nagsisigawan kami lahat sa video call. Kasi siya, ganito, ganyan.
Ito pa, wait lang.
We are a small family of 3, husband and a 5-year-old kid. I'm juggling jobs, different jobs. I am a lawyer and at the same time a financial wealth planner. I also teach in another university outside the Philippines in Japan, online. When we got married, my husband and I were really focused on being financially stable. So the baby was not really on our mind yet. But then, of course, you know, Filipino culture, yung pressure ng parents, pressure ng relatives, but hindi pa kayo magka-baby. Well, we were not really getting any younger that time. We got married, my husband was already 30, and I was already 30 years old then. So the following year, they were already asking, oh, asan na apo namin? Asan na baby? But then, we always say, in God's time. August 2013, we found out that we're pregnant. Of course, we are really happy and we are into it already. We fell in love right away. And it's a fact na we're becoming a parent na.
It was a really complicated and sensitive pregnancy. One of the factors because I found out late na around 6 weeks. And at that time, I was already having the spotting and bleeding. To my mind, I was not aware that I was already pregnant at that time. I'm regular, and then it was not yet the time of the month yet, and then I'm having the spotting. So I took a test and turned out to be positive. The spotting won't stop, and then there's this, they call UTI. There's actually an infection, and I've been given different kinds of antibiotics already. But even with the medicines as well as the pampakapit that they give, the bleeding won't stop.
Unfortunately, we lost the baby on the 8th week of pregnancy.
Of course, it was devastating. I started to question myself. Was it my fault? Did I do something wrong? Did I choose career over the baby? So those are the guilt that comes to my mind. After the first one, we would like to get pregnant again, but there was a complication after the first miscarriage, so I had to be rehabilitated first. So I attended several therapy sessions for my back because there's something wrong with my spine. Trying again to conceive was really hard because my husband actually works abroad. He goes back and forth, so the trying to conceive part was a little bit hard because of the timing. Successfully, we were able to conceive, but this time through medications given by an OB. The second pregnancy, which we thought was going okay, was not really okay. Again, we had an early embryonic demise. We lost the child at 8 weeks again if we found out that it no longer has a heartbeat. For the second time around, it was more emotionally draining than the first one. This comes to the blaming game now. The blaming game whether my husband was really there for me or whether I was good enough. Am I being punished? We promised to be good parents. But how come the Lord is not giving us a blessing? If you think that you've already move on from the first miscarriage? Not really. It never goes away, and the pain actually never fades. Pregnancy is very hard. We started to question God. We are trying hard to be healthy. There's roof above our head, and yet we cannot even conceive healthily. At that time, the OB actually advised us to get tested. And lo and behold, we found out that I have APAS, Antibody Syndrome. The simplest way that my immunologists have explained it to us is that there are killer cells or NK cells inside my body that is actually trying to kill the baby. So no matter how you try to conceive, it will always try to attack the baby. Other than that, she also explained that in connection with APAS, there's also something wrong with my blood. She found out that it was too thick. We have to have treatments for anti-blood thinners. So we underwent LIT treatments, lymphocytes immunization therapy treatments. With this treatment, they usually get blood from my husband, and then they process the blood, and then the immunologist would subcutaneously inject the lymphocytes on my forearm. So it starts with the left, and then after 2 weeks to the right. And it is actually a very painful procedure. After a few hours, my whole arm would get numb and bruises would be all over. If nasaktan na kayo sa skin test, it's 100 times. I remember the first time na tinurukan ako, yung luha ko, bagsak. I couldn't contain the pain as well as yung halo-halo na rin siguro yung emotions, emotionally draining yung process, as well as masakit na, physical na, meron ka pang karga-kargang emotional baggage sa loob. Usually, they do the lymphocyte immunization therapy for 3 to 4 weeks or interval of every 2 weeks. Depende kung available ang husband mo or if there's a donor that will be available to you. Because sometimes, even yung blood ni husband is hindi compatible with you. So, in that case, maghahanap pa ng donor. In my case, we did it 2 weeks interval each kasi my husband would go abroad na to work. So, he had around 2 months back then. So, nagmamadali kami na every 2 weeks. The chances was depending on the response of my body. They have this range kasi parang you need to have at least 80% na tumaas yung parang range mo para you have chances of getting pregnant, a healthy pregnancy. In our case, we started with 10%. So after 3 weeks, it was getting higher. So from 10, we had 40, 60, and eventually we hit 80. Problem is when we started on November, and then we found out that I was pregnant in January when the treatment was still ongoing. So it was a huge shock, and at the same time, we were both afraid, very much afraid, because we are still having the treatment, and we were not expecting that we would be able to conceive. At that time, when we were only about 60% finished pa lang with the treatments. It was strongly advised that we still continue with the treatment. In fact, there were other treatments that were added. So aside from the LIT therapy, we were having this IVIG treatments. It's a dextrose, pero ang laman ng dextrose is malapot na parang gatas. And then you get to have it again after 2 weeks. What was draining actually in the third pregnancy was the treatments. But physically, there was no spotting during the third pregnancy, which I have experienced during the first and second pregnancy. Unfortunately, despite the treatments, the third pregnancy was still unsuccessful. After the third pregnancy, we let go and let God. Tinigil na namin ng mga treatments and everything else. And on January 2016, we found out that I was pregnant for the 4th time. Now, no doctors except for the OB. We were scared more than ever. The 4th pregnancy was something that we never have expected. but the Lord have given it to us. So we took it as a sign that maybe it's God's way of saying na, hey guys, I see that you're already fit to become parents, so now I'm giving you a blessing. But then again, deep inside us, we were so scared. And it was not an easy pregnancy because we still have to do treatments. It is a more sensitive and a high-risk pregnancy. During the whole pregnancy, it was really tiring. Every now and then, I have a spotting. So at that time, we were really scared because we already heard the heartbeat of the baby. We already saw him move. We knew it was a boy already. Our OB was so strict to the point that we were having ultrasound every 3 weeks. On the 7th month, there was this question na if they are to harvest the baby or not. Because in APAS cases, they are so scared that my body might reject the baby. Again, PEDIA was now on board. So the PEDIA now and my OB are already thinking of whether to harvest the baby during the 7th month. And me and my husband was then thinking that if we do this, we are not actually financially stable. So where will the funds come from? We said, Doc, is there a way that we could actually prolong the pregnancy into at least term pregnancy? Because I've read somewhere that it's still good to have the baby born at least full term. And she said, okay, but we will be in close monitoring. I still have to take many medicines. My OB would inject steroids on me. The steroids is to make the lungs of the baby mature faster. Every now and then, I'm having this blood test to check if my NK cells are getting high or not, to check whether the killer cells inside my body are killing the baby again. Finally, we have a schedule for the September 8th cesarean delivery. When the baby was given to me, when I heard him cry, I was also crying inside and outside. I was keep on saying, thank you, Lord, when I heard him cry. But that didn't end there. Another trial was given to us because minutes after the baby was brought to the NICU, they found out that he could not breathe. He was intubated and the condition is critical for the next 48 hours. You know when they say that mother's instinct is so powerful. When I was in the recovery room, the OB said, I have to sleep so that you can see the baby later. Even if I tried to sleep, I couldn't sleep. And then bigla na lang sila nagkagulo. Cold blue. Hindi makahinga yung isang bata. And to my mind, I knew right away that I think that's my baby. At that very moment, I said, I want to see the baby. Please. I remember I couldn't wait for the wheelchair anymore. So I stood up right after the CS, 5 hours after. I used the stairs going to the, I can't remember, was it 4th floor or 5th floor? And then I saw my baby, he was inside. He was inside the incubator with all the tubes on his body. And at that time, I was not allowed to touch him yet. Because they have to figure out, or they have to make sure that he is stable, at least stable. An hour later, I was able to touch him, but just his tiny hand inside the incubator. At that time, we were already begging God. we were already begging the Lord that if He puts us through it, please get us through it. 48 hours have passed. My baby was declared a little bit stable. A little bit stable because we are not out of the woods yet. Another bad news, they found out that his stomach is bleeding. And at that time, we had to look for a pediatric surgeon. Wala na mapaglagyan yung dextrose kasi ubos na yung kamay niya and paa. So they had to put it on his stomach. The first was they had to cut down on his neck. Of course, we objected to and asked if there's any other way. The thing is, all this time, aside from being emotionally drained, we are also financially drained. In the midst of everything else, the hospital will call you. Ma'am, kailangan kailangan niyo po mag-deposit. I really don't know how we were able to pull it through. Right there and then, my sister came all the way from Ilocos. And she had her credit card charged with the deposit. I think it was 100,000. When baby was already stable, they could still not remove the tubes on him. Another problem was, I don't have enough milk for him. Siguro maybe because of the stress na rin and everything else, I could not produce anything for him. One of my friends was able to share milk for the baby. So it was a struggle from 4 to 8 hours, stretched to 5 days, and then 7 days, and then eventually on the 9th day, my baby was out of the tubes already. Fortunately, I think it was on the 11th day when finally the oxygen was already removed from him. My baby's name is Zach Alexander. Zach actually means God remembers. And Alexander means defender. So in our case, he was our defender from loneliness, aside from the fact that his father's name is also Alexis. A rainbow baby is actually a blessing. It is a light after the dark. And it is something that the Lord gives you to brighten your darkest hours.